Spotify sees it and they're like, yo, this video, this guy's done 102 episodes and we want to sponsor this podcast. I've seen it happen time and time again.
Hello, my name is Aaron Wexler, and welcome to another episode of Within the Game. Within the Game is all about how to treat your craft and your life like a game so you can stay inspired, have more fun, and ultimately find fulfillment. And if you are enjoying this podcast, please consider liking, subscribing, and commenting. It really does help. Today's a crazy full circle moment. What's up, Olley? I welcome producer of the show and editor of the show, Olley Thorpe, to the podcast. What's up, Olley? Let's go, man.
Let's go, man. Let's go. Thanks for having me on. It's a pleasure to see what you've built, and to see kind of your goals and your aspirations that have come to life since we first met is amazing. So yeah, thanks for coming on. Thanks for having me on. And it's always good to come in and have a little chat. So let's get to it.
Man, dude, talk about a full circle moment. And for the audience, man, like I met Olley on YouTube, through YouTube, and I reached out to him. He was talking about this content lead, which we're going to get into today, but he is the brains, the background brains of this show. He's all the shows that everyone have seen or have listened to. You know, Olley's been there editing and producing and just kind of coaching me through the whole process. So super stoked to have you on today. Olley, you're a personal trainer turned content media marketing machine, founder of DAF Global, based out of the UK, a YouTube video creator and producer / editor of this show right here Within the Game podcast. Your IG is at Olley Thorpe. Let's get right into it, man. And you know, you've heard this question as an editor, right? Now you get to be a guest. So now you get to answer the question. What does inspired living mean to you, bro?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I do love, hearing other people's responses to that. Inspired living for me is really just having a purpose. I've worked in industries that you would look at as like, you can make a lot of money from, but I just didn't enjoy it. Like, I think that's the main thing for me, is just waking up and working with people that I want to work with, working on projects I want to work with, and just ultimately like not chasing your tail, I think is the thing. Spending time with family, spending time with friends, working with people, like I said, you want to work with, not just doing it because you need that paycheck, doing it more from a fulfillment side of things. And we've had the conversation many a times of like, what are you actually trying to achieve with this podcast? And, is it just a revenue machine, or have you got a bigger purpose? And I think that's always the main thing for me. So working with people on like a coaching level and being able to help them achieve something greater, that's kind of what I'm about.
Yes, man. Let's go. You know, it's so cool to hear you answer that question after all these years, right? We're pushing 3 years now of the show, and you've heard everyone's answer to that question, and it's just super cool to hear yours. And that's why I love working with you, man. Like, you tend to like gravitate towards, inspiration, motivation. And I think ultimately that's why I think, in my personal opinion, that's why you wanted to work with me on this project, because you heard that and you were like, oh man, that's a cool topic, and that's something that we can grow together, right?
100%. And like we've kind of had conversations in the background of, it's really about building something long term. Could you go ahead and put together something and sell it for a ridiculous price and probably get 10 people to sign up, and then have 8 people saying, what the fuck did I just pay for? Or or could you build a brand that in 10 years time from now you're looking at it thinking like, wow, like look what we've managed to achieve. So I think that's the biggest factor for me as well. Like going back to the working scenarios of working with people that you want to work with and you don't want to work with, I think those decisions can be detrimental to you. Like if you're working with someone you don't want to work with, you're not going to create the best work.
Right.
If you're working with someone that you enjoy working with, then that's going to bring out the best in you as well, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. And, you know, for the audience too, like Ollie's been there literally from day one. Like, you know, I was working on this book, The Inspired Athlete, which is now out, and the audiobook is coming out, I think, next week, which is exciting. So by the
Let's
time this,
go.
yeah, by the time this episode is published, that audiobook will be out. So everyone listening, go check out the audiobook version of The Inspired Athlete. But Ollie was right there, you know, kind of helping me shape this idea of like, okay, I have this message inside me. I'm writing a book, and then the pandemic hit, right? And that's when I reached out to you. It was like right in the pandemic. I was like, yo, I want to throw a podcast together. I don't really know how to do that. But here I am, you know, and so that's how we connected, and we've been riding ever since, man. So it's been quite a journey. It's been a lot of fun for me, and a huge learning curve and just experience of learning this whole game. That's what we're talking about today, the game of podcasting, the game of YouTube. So before we get into that, what the reason why we connected was this idea of the content loop. I went on YouTube and I found you somehow. I was trying to remember before we started this. I was like, what keyword did I type in? What phrase did I type into YouTube? Maybe you can help me. I can't remember what it was, but I found you on a channel talking about the content loop. And that was a light bulb moment for me, and it changed my life, to be honest. So I was hoping for the audience, you could kind of explain what that is.
Amazing. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, back during the pandemic probably would be like when you're kind of talking about, to give a little bit of context in terms of like my YouTube career, in a sense of I'm not a big YouTuber whatsoever. And I'll tell you a couple of reasons why I think that's important to say as well. Firstly, I clearly don't need to be a big YouTuber to deliver value and to create relationships. You know, Aaron just told you firsthand that he found me through a YouTube video. It wasn't a YouTube video that had, or a YouTube channel that had millions of subscribers. So this is why I was telling this guy to just start creating, because you never know who's watching. Right. And that, you know, it goes back to that push scenario of like, would you rather 100,000 people following you that are ghosts and they don't engage, they don't buy anything you put out, or would you rather 10 people that every single product you put out, they're buying that shit like it's running out of stock, right? So yeah, back in the day, back in that sort of time, I was I think I'd left working in the gym. So, but I was kind of like, I was always that kid with a camera. I was always like kind of like making videos and just wanting to create. Like if someone was asking me what am I, I'd say I'm a creator, whether that's videos or systems, processes. Like I just like the creation of digital assets, I suppose now would be the main thing. But yes, I was helping people out with podcasts. I actually started my own podcast. It was called the Designer Future Podcast. Now, my idea behind that was I wanted something to reach out to authority people within the online space, and I wanted to do it with a value proposition rather than just like, hey, me and you are in the same industry, like it would be good to connect. Like, no, fuck that. Like no one wants to hear that, right? But I feel like if you've got a podcast, like everyone wants to be invited into podcasts in some shape or another, right? Some people might not have the time, some people might not have the resources. Some people might hit you back and say no. But to me as well, that kind of hunting mentality of like going out, and you actually have a reason to reach out to these people now, rather than just being, like I said, just very generic, hey, thought we should connect. Like, but why would this person want to connect with you?
This episode is brought to you by the Design a Future newsletter. It's a free newsletter released every Saturday for entrepreneurs and content creators to become the healthiest, wealthiest version of themselves, made by editor-in-chief for this podcast, Olley Thorpe. It takes 5 minutes to read and definitely worth signing up. Click the first link in my description to join today.
So that was kind of why I started my own podcast. And why I turned to Zoom to do so was it allowed me to, I see a lot of people making podcasts and it was like, you had to have a studio, you had to have all this equipment, you had to have a microphone, you had to have this, you had to have that. And you had to get people to the podcast. Like you'd
Right.
have to, do you know what I mean? So there was so many limitations. So I turned to Zoom because that way I could reach out to someone on Instagram that I was inspired by and say, hey, look, I know this might seem a little bit strange, but I'd love to have a 10 to 20 minute conversation with you over Zoom. I want to record it and put it on my YouTube channel. I think it could provide value to my audience that want to do X. And for me, that was like such an amazing thing to reach out because it had such a positive response. It had people coming back, yeah, love to do that. So I think I don't know, I think I've done about 30 episodes. It's something I want to continue, if I'm being honest with you. It's just something that obviously working with people like Aaron, naturally your stuff kind of gets put in the background. But that's how I sort of come across with it. And I started working with a few clients, helping them kind of set up their podcast from zero to scratch. There was one client I worked with and we got their YouTube account monetized within like 3 weeks, which
Wow.
to me that was like crazy because at the time my YouTube channel weren't even monetized like through Google AdSense and stuff. And yeah, like he came through, like one of the videos just hit. He interviewed like a big dog in his niche, and the video just got like thousands of views, thousands of subscribers. Like it was like his 3rd podcast episode.
Wow.
And that's why as well, like I think you need that consistency because you just never know which one's going to hit. And me and Aaron's kind of seen that with certain videos and data that we've looked at, but that's kind of where I was at. So I started uploading my own videos, and then someone kind of reached out and was like, how are you doing this? So
right.
I then made the video, and this is probably the keyword that Aaron typed into YouTube because it ranks #1 for this keyword, this keyword search, and it's how to record a podcast using Zoom. This is why I love YouTube, man, because like you said, you kind of hit something on the head, then that video still gets views and views and views every single month, and most importantly, they generate views with intent. Now, that's the difference between having a video go viral. It might get 1 million views, and it's like, yeah, but what do you get out of them 1 million views? And we'll discuss like YouTube revenue and other ways of monetizing as we progress. But when you make a video like that, if someone types in, and you're a living example of this, but if someone types into YouTube how to record a podcast using Zoom, what do you think they're trying to do?
Well, they're trying to create a podcast using
Zoom. Exactly. So that's the way that some people need to switch their mind frame of like creating content on the internet. Not so much of like, is this video going to go fucking viral? No, like, is this video going to generate good leads for me or not? Do you know what I mean? So like, the different way, like, because you could look at it and you could be like, well, I could make this video and it might get 100,000 views. Or I can make this video and it might get 10 views, but 5 of those people might reach out and want to work with me.
Right.
So that's kind of, and to be honest, I didn't make that video with the intention of that being the purpose. I literally made it because one of the people I was working with at the time managing their social media account. So I was literally just creating content for them, like mainly just images on their social media account. And that was a local business. So I was like going to their business, taking photos, taking videos and stuff. And they see one of the episodes I recorded and they was like, how did you do that? So I made that video just for the purpose to send to them. And then I was like, well, I'm going to put this on YouTube. So I put it on YouTube, and obviously, that kind of happened. And it still generates interest to this day because it ranks #1 for that specific keyword. Does it get millions and thousands of views every month? No, but viewers with intent.
Olley, is that the video that you're on the whiteboard talking about how to go from the laptop to the Zoom to the, each step? Is that the one you're talking about?
It is, yeah. So I mean, you mentioned content loops as well, and the reason that I was standing in front of that whiteboard as well is because I think a lot of people that are now creating content, is such a huge part of their business, but it might not be something that you can look at something and be like, is there a direct ROI to that?
Right.
Which is the important thing that people need to think. So it's also about, how can I allocate my time well that I can focus on income producing activities? Will this podcast produce income? 100%. But is it going to be someone watches it and they pay straight away? Like, no, that's not how it's going to work. But like Aaron's kind of showed now, he's built this profile, he's built this podcast, and now he's starting to look at other products that he can kind of leverage that audience and that network from the back of it. So while we was kind of talking about this long form podcast, and you're seeing it now more than ever, and this was what, 3 years ago that I initially had the concept of it, but it was, well, if I could get an expert to come onto a podcast and talk to me for 20 minutes, then I know that I can, being a video editor myself, like I know that I can look at that 20 minutes and kind of pick out little sections of that I can then distribute onto Instagram, onto TikTok, and kind of use it. I always look at it as like a funnel. And if you guys get a chance, go and look at that video, because I kind of look at it as like the podcast is at the top of the funnel. So this is kind of like your starting point. Get someone onto this podcast and then drip feed all of this other content on the back of it, because there's so many podcast episodes that are so valuable. And we also need to look at it now as like, everyone's going short form, which is good and bad, but we can now master both using something like this, because you can tick off your long form content and a podcast as well. This is the thing, is like, it's a certain type of person that listens to a podcast like this. That's what you need to think. And it goes back to what I was saying about like searching with intent with the YouTube videos as well, is like, not everyone will stick around and watch this whole video. Right. Like, we've probably lost viewers now. Like,
right.
Because they want that instant dopamine rush. They want that instant gratification. They're probably on TikTok now on their third video since we started this podcast, right? But it goes back to what I was saying at the start of like, what's the longevity of it, and who is your audience? What are you trying to achieve with that audience? So for me, it was just kind of like a way of like building this content that I could put little to no effort in. Obviously, there's effort into hosting and presenting a podcast, of course, but it's kind of like getting them in and then kind of leveraging that to then make more content and to essentially automate the process. Now, there's tons of work that goes into editing a podcast and creating these short clips and going in and finding those valuable moments, of course, and that takes time. Like, people will watch a 20-second TikTok video, but it's got all of the jazz, it's got the captions that everyone's kind of used to now, because that's kind of the new norm. Everyone's used to seeing like these 20-second clips that are like caption quick, this emoji comes in, blah blah. Like, that shit takes work, and there's like I speak to guys that play. Alex Hormozy's a great example of it. Like, if you look at his content, his short form content now, like, you look at it and you're like, fuck, like, that's what I'm trying to model. But when he talks about like what he pays for that, he pays like 40 grand a month to be putting out that volume of high quality content. And that's a crazy thing. That's a crazy thing to consider. But also, we go back to like, what's he getting out of that? Like, he's putting out 10x the amount of content as, let's say, like one of his competitors, and he's reaping the rewards from that. So yes, he might be spending 40k a month on it, but how much is he making back off of that? You know what I mean? And obviously you've got to weigh these things up, because you need to kind of, this is why I always said to you when we first started, is like, look, there's so many avenues you can go. There's so many ways you can scale it in terms of like building a team, distributing more content, repurposing more content. But there's only one thing you need to do now, and that's get fucking started. So
for sure.
So for me now is like, yeah, for me now, the Zoom podcast is such a good tool for someone that wants a low barrier to entry and doesn't want to, you know, make tons of content in terms of like trying to think of ideas and trying to, you know, have 30 video titles that they're going to sit in front of an iPhone and record and then edit and do all of this, rather than, you know, utilizing other people as well. I think that's amazing because it gives you an opportunity to network with others, whereas like you're just making your own content, then, you know, you don't really need to go and speak to anyone. You don't need to do any of it. Like, your content is your content. But a podcast as well, obviously you can somewhat leverage other people by speaking. You know, you obviously want to go after podcast guests that are going to be authorities, right? That's just a no-brainer. But it gives you a leverage in terms of just building like a content system.
Yeah, like you're an authority. You're an authority in this whole game of podcasting. And I just want to say this too, like, you know, coming from an athlete and like you, like a trainer, coming from this athletic kind of mindset, and you could call that a game too, right? The game of athletics, the game of being a trainer to this content creator, right? That transition, that wasn't necessarily easy, but it did change my life because of what you just said. Right now we have this platform to provide to somebody. You know, it's not just like, hey, do you want to connect? No, it's like, hey, do you want to come on to the platform? Right? Do you want to value? Right? It's a value add, a value proposition. And so before we jump into like, because I actually want to share the editing process, I think it'll be really valuable to people. But I actually want to make this relatable to the audience. You know, most of the audience, as you know, right, you see the analytics, are athletes and entrepreneurs. And, you know, let's help them real quick understand that content loop just a little bit more. So from my understanding, what you taught me was this idea of social media. At the very top, you create a fan. Then that creates, through a long form content like this, like a podcast, a lead. Then maybe you have an offer, right? Which is a customer, right? They buy something like a book, right? Or some sort of low ticket offer. Then they share that thing, or they, you know, they share it without you asking them to, which basically creates a super fan. And then that goes all the way back up to the social media, and it's this content loop, right? And there's other little spots that I'm learning now that you can fill in along the way, maybe a higher ticket offer, maybe, you know, there's a social media group, like a private Facebook group, but what I just kind of explained is my interpretation of the content loop. Am I kind of on point with all that?
Yeah, 100%. And I wish I could kind of stand in front of a whiteboard right now and show you.
We'll cut it later. We'll add it later.
We'll cut it later. I can add it in. But like, yeah, like the thing is now is like, it's exactly right to what you said, is like, you're building a community, right? And it goes back to what I said of like, would you rather 100,000 people follow this podcast or 10 people that buy everything that you put out? And the main thing, when you think about sales, right? I come from a big sales background, and when you think about selling anything, there's three main factors that go into it, right? There's, do I like this person? Do I know this person? Do I trust this person? So if someone watches an hour episode of your podcast, Aaron, they probably like you, because they wouldn't have stuck around for 60 minutes listening to this episode, right? They feel like they know you. They've just sat in a room, you know. This is what podcasting allows you to like create with your audience as well. Because this isn't, oh, I see a 15-second TikTok, like I feel like I fucking know that person.
Right.
Like, you know what I mean? That's the real difference to me. Is like, someone watches a 60-minute episode of you and someone else, like they feel like they're sitting in the room with them. Right?
Yeah, it creates the relationship.
So it creates that relationship. So they like that person, because they wouldn't have stuck around for an hour listening to you and someone else talk about whatever if they didn't like it, right? So they feel like they know you because they've been on a 60-minute conversation with you, that they know you, right? And they trust you because you you're an authority. You're speaking to this person, and you're talking about your knowledge and your experiences. So you kind of tick off all of those bases. And it, you know, going back to how we kind of first met, the reason you booked in a call with me is because you watched a 12-minute video of me showing you exactly how this thing works. This is how you do it. Oh, by the way, at the end of the video was look, if you want to work together to put this plan into motion, there's a link in the description. Click it. We can book in a call.
Yeah, call to action. That was a nice call to action.
There's a call to action, right? And that's all it really is. Like, in honesty, like, people overcomplicate this shit a little bit. In terms of like, create valuable content that resonates with people, answers their problems or that's, you know, that kind of thing, and then have a call to action and an offer. Like, there's only three main things really, and I think where a lot of people get stuck is like not knowing what content to make. But if you know who you're speaking to, then you know what content to make.
Totally.
If you know what value you can provide and how you can take someone from A to B, then you know what your offer is. We took Aaron from not having a clue how to create a podcast to celebrating his 50th episode the other day.
Let's go.
So that's a great example. But, you know, I think I've lost what the question was, but
it's okay. It's basically the idea of the content loop, and really just trying to like explain it to, like, for myself, right? I just want to share this. For myself, when I found you, I was an athlete and a coach, right? I didn't know about content loops. I didn't know about content creation, you know, and putting myself in those shoes before, right? Now we're coming up on episode 62, I think now. But before all this is overwhelming. It's overwhelming. It's a lot, and it's constantly changing. So that's what I was trying to do, is to break this down in a simple way where it's not just an athlete. More I think about it, it could be a real estate agent. It could be a barbershop owner. It could be a whatever, right? It's a content-driven marketplace, Olley. That's what I realized by working with you and learning from you. Content, talking about that short form content, that's what drives emotional responses, which creates buying decisions now.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's what I realized. I was like, oh, wow, like content, it's a content driven marketplace. So going back to that just briefly before we move on, that content loop, how can we break that down for someone who's like, what are you guys talking about?
Yeah. So like I said, the ability, like, I've got videos on my channels on like how to create a content calendar, for example, how to shoot videos, how to edit videos, how to schedule videos, etc. For me, the content loop is the ability to repurpose one piece of content as many times as humanly possible, so you can get rewarded from this one piece of work as many times as humanly possible. For me, that is it. That is, how can I, you know, I've got to say it, but of like, how can I do the least amount of work and get the most amount of value from it?
Man, I really want you to repeat that, but there is like a little echo.
Is that a little bit better?
There's just like I feel like it's like maybe the room that you're in or something.
Let me plug these in. It might be a little bit better.
All right, try that. But what you just said is the soundbite that we're gonna use, because that was perfect.
I'm in a new room, guys, as well. So apologies if there is
my editor's got sound issues, everybody. See?
Yeah, I haven't even got my like mic plugged in, to be fair.
Oh man, of all episodes, come on, bud.
I'm rogue. I'm running rogue. I'm sorry.
But no, exactly what you just said. That was perfect. Like, yeah, I think the idea behind this content loop. Yeah, sorry. No, I was going to say, I think the idea behind this content loop, it's that it's a light bulb moment for a lot of people. Like for me, it was a light bulb moment. I was like, oh my God, that is actually the new sales funnel. Coming from I come from sales too, like from a traditional sales funnel, you're like taking a lead and you're squeezing a sale or a transaction out of somebody. But the content loop is a constant, never-ending loop of potential customers for life. And that to me was like a light bulb moment. I was like, oh man, I'm not just going to try to, create one transaction. No, I'm going to provide constant value through content forever. And that's the other cool thing about this idea of content is that, and the YouTube channel, that it stays up forever, and that's so cool. And that's, there's still videos that, like you said, videos that you're making, videos that I've created that are performing great. And we'll get into the algorithm, but like it's like an upward trajectory,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So exactly that. It was like the whole kind of idea behind that was, how do I create something that's gonna essentially continue to pay me dividends over and over and over again, with kind of like the least amount of input with the most amount of output is essentially the push comes to shove with that. But yeah, going into your point of, making content that is evergreen, I think is a massive thing. Is huge because like you said, a lot when you think about sales as well, like especially with something like this, like a lot of people might not click onto your first video, scroll straight down and click into buying a link. And that's why as well, I think that kind of building that trust and authority is so important. And now when we're speaking, one thing I've been on Aaron's back, so you can comment this in the comments if you're watching and listening to this now, tell this guy to start an email list, because I've been onto him. This is
I knew that was going to come up.
Because this is the point as well, right? Is because realistically, like you look at it, is like someone's not gonna, someone might not watch this hour-long episode, scroll down and see, oh, Aaron's selling this product, or Aaron's selling this product, I'm going to go ahead and buy it. But what they might go into is join Aaron's newsletter, where once a week he drops value, because he speaks to all of these athletes, he speaks to these pro athletes that have achieved so much, and he's got so much value in that head that he can distribute to his audience. Hey, sign up to my newsletter. I drop it every Saturday. It's a 5-minute read. You're going to love it, right? There's no cost involved there, right? So that's where it is the ability to grow an audience and nurture an audience is the main thing, right? Because like you said, not everyone's going to come in and want to hand you their money straight away. And realistically, I wouldn't want that, because it's like, right, well, where's the value, right? So
right.
The ability to bring someone in from not knowing who you are to like knowing and trusting you to a point that no matter what you put out, they're going to be somewhat interested in pulling the trigger and buying that thing from you, right? And there's people that I've worked with in the past that I know that if I was to release a paid program tomorrow, I'm pretty sure that they'd want to get involved. And that's a lot of it's around the content that I've made over the years. So
yeah.
You don't need an audience of thousands of people to do that. You need an audience that are specific in what they want, and you need to be able to take them from A to B.
So let's talk about personal branding. Let's talk about personal branding. We'll come back to the YouTube stuff, because I actually want to do a deep dive into that. But let's talk about personal branding for an athlete, right? Let's talk to the athlete right now who's listening to this, and they're like, okay, content loop. All right, starting a podcast, transitioning maybe or even you could be right in the middle of your athletic career, but you're starting a podcast, right? Okay. And you're seeing, maybe that person is seeing what we're talking about, the content loop, seeing everything. So, okay, how do I really maximize my, career through content, right? Through social media, through this content loop, right? Let's talk to that person right now and say, how can we help them? Because it's actually not necessarily easy to just focus on your athletic career, go to your trainings, go to your practices, stay focused on competition. But at the same time, in your mind, it's like, okay, let me create content. Let me create this whole personal brand in the background while I'm doing those things, so that after I'm done playing, I'll have a platform, I'll have something to offer.
100%. Yeah. It goes back to what I was saying about like, how can I do the least amount and get the most amount out of it, right?
Yeah.
Because if you're looking at making, say for example, you wanted to grow on TikTok.
Yeah.
For me to say it's a pretty simple formula would be bullshit, because there's so much that goes into it. But when you look at the fundamentals, it's like post every day on TikTok. I guarantee in a year's time, you're going to have grown on TikTok, right? And it's similar to YouTube. Like, how are you going to grow on YouTube? Well, post as much as you can on YouTube, and something's going to kind of work, and then pivot and go from there. But like you said, an athlete that's got all of these other things going on. And, if we're talking about the inspired athlete of like entrepreneurs or business owners or stuff, like an athlete and an entrepreneur are very, very similar, right? They need to say no to certain things that they know if they do say yes to it, it's going to hinder their performance, right? And a lot of them are strapped for time, because time is money, right? And we need to get paid for our time. So if I was an athlete, then I would genuinely start with a podcast, because you've got a good kind of baseline, and it's one of those things that you can start. Maybe it's, I'm going to start by speaking with my teammate for half an hour once a month. And then it goes back to like, you have a half an hour conversation with someone, you can go and find an editor, you can find someone that can cut that up and make that into 30 clips for your TikTok. And it's like, well, I only had to sit down for half an hour, record that. And it's all about building a team and building a process. And, I've put it to you many a times of like, there'll be times where I don't necessarily think me and you should work together, because there'll be times that you should really go out and build that for yourself. And I will say that to you, I will. But like, that's also like how you want to look at it. Like, I've got a YouTube channel that I don't touch now. Like, I've got a team that, does all of that for me. And, it wasn't always that way, because you need to kind of build the steps and build the processes that allow you to then remove yourself from it. But if you're talking about a personal brand is a very, very hard thing to automate, because the personal brand is you.
Right.
So a YouTube channel that's about a specific industry and a specific topic that isn't anything to do with me, it's not me sitting in front of a camera, then you can outsource and pay someone else to run and manage that for you. A personal brand becomes very, very difficult, because you need to be sitting in front of the camera because people are there for you.
Yep.
So to kind of answer that question of like, what would I do if I was an athlete? It would be starting a podcast, because it's the lowest barrier to entry. Someone might not be able to jump on the TikTok and make like engaging videos for it. I would also, if I'm being honest, I would pair the two. I've always said to you about TikTok of like, there's such a need on there right now. Of like, I would set up a 30-minute conversation, press record, hit on Zoom every single month, get that booked into your diary so that's coming. Go onto Fiverr, go onto Upwork, find an editor, say, hey, look, this is what I want to do. I'm going to shoot this 30-minute Zoom podcast. I want to send it to you, and I want you to go in and cut it into as many short form clips as humanly possible. How much will it cost? Hey, Olley, yeah, that's going to cost £500 per month. Okay, cool. That's done, right? So now I know that I've got one piece of content going out every single day based on my time input of 30 minutes once a month. So me looking at that as like my input versus my output, well, my input is 30 minutes of my time once a month, and £500 to my editor once a month to make sure that's all done. Does that make sense? So everything boils down to like, what's the system and the process behind it? And then I would post every single day on TikTok if I was that person, because the TikTok, like, you could just make that of like go onto TikTok, hit record, make a fucking sick video, and then the next day try and make a better video, and then the next day try and make a better video, and the next day try and make a better video. Like, that's the way that I would just compound like my skill set within TikTok, and let this podcast thing like automate that, and then just get really good at making TikToks. That's what I would do. Because then you're kind of, you've got two different kind of avenues. And then I would look into like, how can I repurpose this content as much as possible? So when I'm interviewing this person, how can I take what he said in that interview, and once a month sit down and create a blog post around this conversation I had with this person, and a conversation I had about this person. It all boils down to the system and the process of, if I need to create one video for TikTok every single day, what does my system and my process need to be to do that? So there was a time, I think we spoke about this in the past, that there was a time that I was like heavy in TikTok. I was like, if I create 3 TikToks a day, I know that one of them will blow up. And I think the TikTok that was probably like the worst TikTok I made out of all of them during that time frame was the one that got like 800,000 views in like 24 hours. So it's just kind of like putting stuff out, and obviously the more you do it, the better you're going to get as well, is like the main thing. And the more the biggest thing right now is just like, it's so easy to get in a TikTok hole of like watching, you know, TikTok for an hour or for 2 hours. Like, it's scary because it's such a dopamine rush. But when push comes to shove, it is consume less and create more.
That's a mic drop moment right there. And if you guys are listening, you're still with us, and you need an editor, we got one right here. You know, Olley's been man, you've been a godsend for me, man. And you know, I actually want to talk about this. Let's get into the editing process, because I think the editing process is actually a big pain point for a lot of content creators, right? Content creators, I can call myself one now. Like, you know, we're doing the podcast, right? We put so much time and effort and energy. Ooh, a little background, nice background there.
Sorry.
We put so much time and effort and energy into creating content. It's actually challenging to go through the content, cut it up, edit it, and make it presentable on all these platforms that we're talking about. Let's talk about the actual process that we go through, you and I go through for this particular show right now, on how we record an episode like we're doing right now, and then the whole process. I want someone to learn this, because this was a learning curve for me. So let's share it right now. So I'll start, and then you can fill in some details. So the very first thing is booking a guest, right? So Olley and I, we talked about a day and a time. And then, you know, sometimes that shifts around, but we lock that in. The next thing I do is come up with an outline. These are some of the talking points that I want to get to. We'll go ahead and we'll do the whole podcast. We'll record it right here. I'll send this file straight to Olley, right? We have a Google shared doc set up. And then Olley, you want to take over from there? What happens at that point?
Yeah, absolutely. So from that moment, the main kind of thing is like adding branding and stuff like this. And, you know, this is something I've kind of said to yourself as well, is like, that's important, like, to do that for sure. But it's like, how can you kind of refine that process as well? That it's the time in versus the time out. So like from there, we would take this long form video, add Aaron's branding onto it, add you know, like an intro and outro, and go from there. And this is definitely like a pivotal point to talk about as well, in terms of like how it's now changed in a sense of, well, of like, now like you see podcasts as well, like they're even going like shorter form, but like in the long episodes of podcasts. So like a lot of people now as well are even like not putting out like long form podcasts. They're more so like recording a long form podcast, and then they're putting out like 10-minute segments where they're speaking about certain guests, certain parts. Yep. So that's something obviously we want to consider. But there's also like, you look at like what's the time investment from that, of like, that's then not just making one video, that's making 4 videos. Yeah, so that's the thing. Like, there's so many different ways you can go about it. But in terms of the process that we follow is, come in, add the branding, add the intro, add the outro, and then really start to kind of like see, okay, what bits are going to work for social media from here. And that's where you'd kind of go in and see, this would make a really good clip and this would make a really good clip. And the thing is with like long form videos, like, I don't know how long we've been on here, but let's say the average video is an hour long. Exporting a video that's an hour long takes a long time. And like when you're any video editors will know what I'm talking about here as well. Of like, if you're exporting an hour long video, that can then take an hour. And like you can't do anything else on your computer while videos exporting, because it's just like the fans going crazy and whatnot. So like that is like a lot of like admin time, like as well, rather than just like pure video editing. So that's kind of where we go from there. Once that video's exported, then it's kind of like, okay, what's the thumbnail going to be? And this is a really hard like place to do thumbnails. And me and you have kind of spoke in the past of like, what makes a good thumbnail for a 60-minute podcast? It's really fucking hard, especially when it's really hard, like when you think about it, because if I don't know, let's say, how to record a podcast on Zoom. I'll go back to that because we were talking about it, but it's very, very easy for me to make a thumbnail for that, because what they're looking for, what is going to make them click. When you're interviewing someone, I feel like it's very hard to be like, this is what the thumbnail is going to be about, because this is what the hour that we, do you know what I mean? It's not because we speak about so many different topics, and it's kind of like, you need to leverage that person, you need to have them in the thumbnail, but it's also like, so I feel like you kind of need to, it's hard with like a long form video like that, because it's kind of like, you need to just add, the host and the guest into that thumbnail, but it's like, well, how can I make that people want to click on it? And it's a very hard thing to do in terms of like, what can you do with that? But I think as well, like, you just kind of need to look at examples. You need to look at how, what's other people doing, what's working well for them. And thumbnails are very, very hard in general, but for something like, a 60-minute video, it's a hard job to get people to click onto those videos. I'm not going to lie. A lot of it will be down to like the guest, and someone is interested in that guest, and that's the reason they're going to click. Thumbnail probably isn't going to be the biggest deciding factor to someone clicking on that. Do you know what I mean? Like if I was interviewing Bill Gates and it was just a picture of Bill Gates that I found on Google, then loads of people might click onto it just to the fact that it's like, I'm interviewing Bill Gates. Or no one might click on it because they're like, this guy's not fucking interviewing Bill Gates. He's just downloaded a picture from Google and he's put it as his thumbnail. Versus if there was a picture and it's me and Bill Gates, like, and I've got my arm over him, people are like, oh shit. So do you know what I mean? Like, there's just these little kind of differences that could make the hugest difference.
All right, so we got the thumbnail.
That's kind of where you are. I went on a bit of a tangent there, but I think there could be some value within that. But and then it's kind of like going through and where the most time consuming thing is for me is creating those short form clips. So I'm definitely a bit of a perfectionist in terms of like, people look at these 20-second clips and think like they're just a 20-second clip, but like a 20-second clip, like I made a 15-second video for a brand before. And we won't go into numbers, but I charged them a very, very juicy amount from an outsider to look at a 15-second video. They'd be like, it's a 15-second video. And like, but people don't understand, like, you look at adverts that you watch on a TV, like, how long are they? Like, they're not long, right? They're quick. They're quick, right? But imagine that, like, they're millions and millions of dollars budget that go into that 15-second. The Super Bowl is a great example of it. It was like, people pay like ridiculous amounts for their like 30-second video to be in
millions.
Yeah. And it's like, how much do you think they spent on production of that video that is 30 seconds? But an outsider will look at that and be like, oh, that was a cool video. I'm not seeing that like blood, sweat, and tears have gone into that 30 seconds. And that's why I like YouTube as well is just like crazy, is in like, for you to create like even like a 10-minute video that someone watches from the start to the end, you've done a fucking amazing job if you've done that.
Yeah, no, totally. And we're getting there. I want to spend some time on YouTube analytics, but I want to finish this process. So, so you do the editing, the clips, and yeah, you're right. The clips are a lot of work. Even for someone like me, who I did the episode, I got to go look back and be like, okay, what's a good clip or 2 or 3 to share? So that takes a long time. We talked about the thumbnail. The next process is then you upload that file after you produce it and edit it to the YouTube studio, right? Yep. And then this is where my interns come in. Shout out Olivia and Kezier. They're amazing interns. So I appreciate you guys. They go through and they do the timestamps, right? And that's super helpful, right? Super helpful to get the timestamps done, because that's another time consuming process. 100%. But it really does help in terms of us as well as the viewers, right, to go through and see those little timestamps of where of interest, right? Okay, this is an interesting part. Let me click right to that instead of scrolling through. So that's really helpful. And then the big one, right? The big one is the title. Creating a title for an episode is a process too, right? It's you're aggregating all the information from an hour episode into a phrase, right? And you're trying to attract a click, right? But also to summarize. You're trying to summarize a full hour-long episode into a couple of words and try to reflect on what was said and also make it interesting. So the title, there is a tool out there. Maybe you can talk about this too, Olley, the YouTube title generator tool online. That does help. There's more and more AI programs that are helping with all this stuff. Maybe we can talk about ChatGPT and all that, because I'm sure there will be more and more AI programs specifically for creators. Yeah. But that title is important, right? So just to finish this process before we move on. So we talked about the thumbnail. We talked about the YouTube timestamps. We talked about the title. At that point, right when that, and then hashtags, right? There's some hashtags that we put in there as well. That's when I go in and click publish. And I try to do my best to stay consistent, because Olley's been on me and saying, hey, you got to be consistent. Consistency is key. Trying to stay consistent to a specific time and day. But that's the whole process. And I just wanted to lay that out for people, because when people watch podcasts, they're like, oh, cool, it's another episode. But there is a lot that goes into this, and we didn't even talk about downloading. I didn't even talk about downloading the MP3 and uploading the MP3 into the audio host, which is Captivate.fm, which is something completely different than YouTube. But for right now, let's just stay on YouTube. Any reflections from that process? How can we make that? Another thing is Trello, right? Another tool that you use is Trello to kind of map out that process to make it more organized. So if there's anything here you want to reflect on. Yeah.
I think, the main thing I picked up on is like AI around titles.
Yeah.
I'd get rid of that.
Okay.
Mainly for the fact that AIs aren't clicking on your videos, humans are. So people always talk about the YouTube algorithm and like, what can I do to hack the YouTube algorithm? Like, I've just found this and it's managed to do it. But really and truly, like, as marketers, in a sense, like, you understand what makes humans do things, then you'll master that. Like, so
psychology.
It's psychology over everything. Yeah, 100%. But it's like, and I hate to go back to it, but it's like talking about the title of the video that you found me through is like, I know that you got to think of it as like, I'm a consumer of it. Is like, a large portion of people go onto YouTube and they type in how to solve problems. Yeah, they go in. Yeah, so I'm looking at like, when I made that video, I'm looking at it as like, what would I type into YouTube if I wanted the answer to this problem? So as well, like, I think that's kind of the thing of the title. It's very, very hard, because you need to create intrigue as well, because if people people's not going into YouTube and type in Olley Thorpe, let's say. People's not really going into YouTube and type in Aaron Wexler. They might be now, like, because you've kind of built that, and but I'm man enough to kind of say, like, people aren't going into YouTube and typing in my name. I know that, but people are going into YouTube and typing in, how do I solve this problem? And that's where I want to be. That's where I want to show up and provide value. So with the thumbnail, with the titles as well, it's very, like I mentioned before when we was talking about like creating the thumbnails and titles like go hand in hand, but they both chain up together. They both need to kind of work, right? They need to work together. And there's also like, how can my title synergize with my thumbnail? So an example of that is like, let's say like this, let's just say like this saved my life, and then it's like me staring at a mug. You'd be like, fuck it, what, a mug saved his life? Intrigue. Like, I want to click on that because it's like, what does he mean a cup saved his life? Do you know what I mean? Like there's the intrigue. Or it's like there's so many different examples, but it's kind of like you need to create a reason for someone to click on that video.
Absolutely.
Doing a podcast is a very hard thing to do, to create a title and a thumbnail, unless it's very, very specific in terms of like, this person just achieved this goal and we was asking her how she did it. This title is going to reflect that. The thumbnail is going to reflect that, versus speaking to someone for 60 minutes and this is their life. This is what they used to do. This is how they achieved it. This is what they're looking to do in the past. It's like, well, what should I be speaking about in the title and the thumbnail? So this might be like a little discussion for me and you as well. It's like, that's a very hard process, like a very, very hard process. And I've said it to you many a times, and even like we've had the conversation of like, I might put a thumbnail to you and you're like, Leah, can we change that to this? Because it's a very, very hard thing to be like, well, I don't really know what to do a thumbnail around this particular topic, because it's just you speaking to another person. And where it does become a good situation is like when you've spoken to people that have achieved certain goals, it makes so much sense for the title and the thumbnail to be around that, because for obvious reasons, right? People,
like a Olympic gold medalist.
Yeah, it makes sense to have the title and the thumbnail to be them holding the Olympic medal, and the Olympic medalist does X, Y, and Z. It makes total sense. So and talking about content, talking about thumbnails, talking about titles, it is a learning game. Like, it is continuously evolving. It's continuously like, you need to put in the reps, and you need to put in the reps, and you need to, something that works today, even if you're watching this now and I'm like, do this, tomorrow that might not be true. But having the skill set and being able to adapt to those things is what will kind of take you from push to shove. And there's videos that I've made years ago that I look back and I'm like, what is that thumbnail? Like, what is that thumbnail? And then I might change it, and all of a sudden it spikes views, and it spikes people coming to that video. But that's just a constant, it's a constant flywheel, this whole game. It's a constant.
Let's just kind of finish up this amazing conversation, Olley, with a little bit of a dive into the YouTube analytics, right? And before we do that, I just want to say this, like, you have helped me to create this bullish idea on YouTube, right? YouTube to me is like this amazing, like, not just content machine marketplace, but it's also this community where I've, like, obviously you and I, met through YouTube, but it's like this ever growing like community. There's more and more content creators. There's more advertisers coming in. There's now you have YouTube Shorts. There's all these strategies about how to monetize. Man, YouTube. So let's just talk about how you look at analytics and then the future of YouTube.
Yeah, absolutely. How I look at analytics is it's another one of those things of like, you can get deep into analytics, but it goes back to like the human psychology of like, have I made a good video? Will people click on it? Fuck the analytics. Like, do you know what I mean? You could deep dive into like, this is my best performing video, so I need to make more of it, which makes sense from like an analytical data driven point of view. Don't get me wrong, but also it goes back to like what you said about like AI writing titles. It's like, yeah, but like, will a human click on that? Like, don't get me wrong, like AI is fast approaching, and it's gonna change the way that we do so many things. But it's also like with like YouTube and looking at it like that, like there'll be titles that an AI couldn't write. Do you know what I mean? But so yeah, looking at analytics is like a whole game in itself. And yeah, I'm definitely going to be releasing some kind of like programs around that. So obviously we'll kind of bring that out when it happens. But looking at analytics is like, yeah, looking at videos that are performing well obviously makes sense. You know, people really resonated with this type of content, so let's make more of it. It makes sense, right? So many people clicked on this video. Why? Was it the title? Was it the thumbnail? But all of that are kind of variables that you can't really just see. You know, you can see a click-through rate on a thumbnail, for example. The click-through rate on a thumbnail, if it's 14% or it's 1%, well, that's a better thumbnail than that one. But there's also still so many variables behind that. Someone might not have clicked on that video because that video, you know, is not a video they want to click on. And it's very, very hard to look at that from an analytical point of view and not think of it more of like a, you know, Mr. Beast says it very, very well of like, it's a title and a thumbnail that people are going to click on. Like the analytics are obviously going to show that, but that's the core of YouTube. Is one, you need to make a really, 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 really good video. Two, you need to package that video that people are going to click on it so they can discover as a really, really good video. Because if people don't click on the really good video, then they don't know it's a really good video. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
The first like 10 to 20 seconds of a YouTube video needs to be the point where you deliver that value of like, clicked on this video expecting to get this, and they've delivered on it. So I hate to keep going back to it, but same again, like you click onto the video, how to record a podcast on Zoom, you click on it and it's me going, hey, in today's video, we're going to talk about how to record a podcast on Zoom. If that's what you come here for, you're going to watch the rest of the video. But if you clicked on the video and it's like me making a cup of tea or having a coffee, and it's just like talking about how Arsenal did last week in the Premier League, then you'd be like, this isn't what I clicked on for. And you'd got to find another video. So yeah, talking about analytics, same again, like there's so many people. I know like content creators that have got like hundreds of thousands of subscribers, and they don't look at the analytics, like, because they know what their audience wants, because they know who they're speaking to. So knowing who you're speaking to should really factor all of your decisions, because if you know who you're speaking to, then you know the content they want to watch. So if I'm looking at it, I'm like, all right, well, people wanted to know how to record a podcast on Zoom. What are they looking for next? Once they've solved that problem, what are they looking for? So like, Aaron, how to manage your podcast more efficiently so you can handle 40 bookings a month. That could be the next episode that person wants to watch, right? Once they've done that, how can you monetize your podcast through YouTube? What are they going to look after that? So I think it's just like, how can you continuously provide value? And obviously the packaging of how that looks will be ever changing. And you'll look at, you know, titles and thumbnails, and there's definitely trends that happen, but it's also like, for me, like, it's like you can hop on trends, and I think you should hop on trends, but it's like you also need to stay true to your vision and your values of like, a big group in the UK is the Sidemen, for example, and they went through like a massive, you heard of the Sidemen, you must have, like they're huge, obviously. But like they went through a massive thing of like doing diss tracks on each other. And it's like someone could have jumped on and made like diss tracks on someone, but it's like if you're a consultant and you're making like valuable videos about this, it doesn't make sense for me to make a like how to record a podcast on Zoom and then then the next video to be a diss track to Jake Paul, for example, because I think that's going to get views. And it goes back to what we were speaking about originally of like, would you rather 100,000 people that follow you and don't value you for what you're trying to think, or would you rather 10 people that are going to buy from you and so on? So in terms of the future of YouTube, I think it's going to become more competitive, not like it's not already. It's fucking massively competitive. Like I think there's like thousands and thousands of videos uploaded every second onto YouTube. It's ridiculous. Like if you ever look at the stats, it's definitely going to be a long-term game, but it's also from a monetization platform. I've said this to you from the start. Don't be looking at YouTube AdSense and think like, how can I grow? Obviously, we want to grow the YouTube AdSense, but there's so many variables to that. And it's also, like you said, you're not building a platform for you to increase revenue through YouTube. Yes, it's a byproduct of you making amazing videos that people want to watch, but it's where does the person that watches that 60-minute episode, what action do you want them to take at the end of that? Sign up to my newsletter. Get valuable information sent to you every single week. They're seeing that every single week. Wow, yeah, great information. Third email that they get, by the way, I actually have this product. Shit, like I've gone through that journey. I like, know, and trust this guy. I've signed up to his email list. He's provided value. Now he's got an offer that answers the problems that I am facing. That's where I'm going to buy. And that's when you have a customer, and then you can upsell it. Like, and obviously it goes back to the kind of sales cycle of like bringing them through that funnel that we talked about before of like, you need to generate attention, create loyal fans, and then solve their problems. I think that's the main thing, because, we could talk about analytics, we could dive deep into analytics, but, I think it's very obvious of like, this video generated me X amount of subscribers. Yeah. That's the one that's been working the most. But if you did that exact video again, is that going to work? Maybe, maybe not. But it's just a testing game. It's just a taking continuous action. And it goes back to consume less, but create more, but consume other people's content that inspires and motivates you to take action. And you need to be aware of like what other people are doing, because you need to model from success. And a lot of people, we talked about titles and thumbnails, right? A lot of the time we try and reinvent the wheel, but like sometimes like you can literally go onto YouTube, type in a certain keyword or a search term, filter it by the most viewed video. Okay, well, this video got 5 million views and it had this title and this thumbnail. Why? Why did 5 million people click on this title and thumbnail? And it's also, if you're looking at it as like a creator, is like, if I made a similar video, didn't plagiarize this video, I didn't go in and copy this video word for word and record it exactly the same, I put my spin on it, then why wouldn't 1 million of those people watch my video? Right. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think for someone like yourself, it is kind of like also knowing when to pivot with these things of like, yeah, like people are interested in these conversations with athletes, but it's like, why? Like, what are people getting out of listening to these conversations? And it's like, well, how can I better package those videos to accommodate that?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm always thinking that.
Yeah, and as a podcaster, it is. I don't know if I've mentioned this guy to you before, but it's like Stephen Bartlett. He's like UK entrepreneur, massive guy. He has the Diary of a CEO. definitely suggest going and checking out his videos. But he interviews like very, very affluent, interesting people, entrepreneurs, like celebrities, social people and whatnot. But the questions he asks are the questions of what people are there for. As in, like, those people might have been on 100 other episodes, but he'll ask a question, they'll answer it, and he'll be like, so why did you do that? And that's what they come for. Do you know what I mean? So I think as a podcaster as well, it's kind of like, you can be very, very generic in terms of like, this is an interview, these are the questions I'm going to ask, but it's also knowing to be like, you know, why did you start YouTube, Aaron? This would be a question to me. And I'm like, you'd answer it, and then I'd be like, yeah, but why was YouTube the answer? And like digging deep into that, because that is where the value is. So yeah.
Yeah. No, podcasting is definitely a skill, and it's definitely a passion for me now. I love this. Olley, before I let you go, man, I know you mentioned fulfillment at the very beginning of this, but just talk a little bit more about that as we close up this episode. You know, fulfillment. How have you found it? How do you continue to look for it? You know, and like, just really define it again for us.
Yeah, absolutely. For me, you know, like we work on different time zones. There'll be times where I've edited something for you and you're like, yo, can we change this? And I'm like, man, it's 11 o'clock at night here. Like, I need to go to bed. And I'm just like, yeah, but like, he wants this out tomorrow. Like, I need to get it done. It's not the money aspect of me for that. Like I said, there's jobs I've worked in the past, there's roles I've done in the past that you can make a shit ton of money, but it would be sacrificing my values of what I want to achieve and who I want to impact. And I've said that from the start with you, is like, there's projects that I've worked on that we've done a lot more in terms of revenue, but the impact and the my vision and what I can see in you and what you can achieve, that shit will serve me so much better than anything else. So fulfillment for me, like, really is just like, I don't need like all of these mad materialistic things, and whether that's a good thing or a bad thing from like a growth perspective. Fulfillment for me is like having the time to work on projects that I want to work on with people I want to work with, is the main thing. Like the money is a byproduct of that, but the fulfillment side of things is, yeah, just working with people I want to work with on projects that I'm excited about. I think that's the main kind of factor, man, because, you know, like you said, there's many kind of, and I'm pretty like different to a lot of people in terms of like, I've got people that I know that have, you know, left school, got into a job and been in the same job for 10 years, and it's like, you speak to it and it's like, how's your job? And they're like, fucking hate it. And you're like, why are you still there? And I'm like one of them that have like jumped around different jobs and stuff like that, because, you know, you want to use like that side of things as like a way to build up your skills. And any successful person will have like a solid skill stack. And that's like when you speak about like most millionaires and billionaires and stuff, it's like, you could take all of their money away and they'll probably go out and make it again, because they know how to make money. They've got that skill stack that they can go out and do it again and again and again. So I think really fulfillment for me is just me fulfilling my potential. Would be the one, but doing it without sacrificing relationships and family will be the thing.
I love it, bro. I love it, man. What a cool episode, full circle moment. How can people best get in touch with you or follow you or support you?
Yeah, absolutely. So spoke to Aaron. We're gonna start chucking in a few things of mine. I have started a newsletter. It will go out every Saturday, London time. It's a 5-minute newsletter. dive deep into the creator economy, how you can create better content that makes you more money, and eventually, you know, you can scale that and remove yourself from it as best as possible. So I say that's probably the best place. I'll shoot Aaron a link. Probably go sign up to that for free in the description. I'm not really on Instagram anymore. Waste too much time in my opinion. Going back to what I've got written on the board there, and I've said it multiple times here, is consume less and create more. Delete Instagram, man. Delete TikTok. I only go on those platforms to create, not to consume. And I know that that's kind of hard to say and hard to do, but to finish up and wrap up this episode as well, the most important skill that any of you guys watching and listening, and something that's my main thing to work on right now, is your most important skill is focus. Outside of everything else, your ability to focus on one task and to be able to do that again and again and again and again. Because like you said, recording a podcast, you might do the 50th episode and be like, this is getting a bit long. Like, this is just, I'm just speaking to people over and over again. And it's like, yeah, but the 102nd episode might be where Spotify sees it and they're like, yo, this video, this guy's done 102 episodes and we want to sponsor this podcast. I've seen it happen time and time and time and time again. And going into YouTube, like, I uploaded 150 videos before my YouTube channel got monetized. But if we're talking about YouTube as a business, like I said, you're not doing it for the AdSense. Obviously that could be a byproduct of it, but if you're using it as a business tool, it's completely separate as a creator. Yeah, I mean, I could speak for hours and hours, you know that, Aaron. So we might need a second episode, but to cut it off, yeah, you can go and join my newsletter. It'll be in the description. It's going to be a 5-minute newsletter. Come to you once a week, and I'll see you guys there.
Yeah, perfect. And I'm also going to link that the link to the other video that we were talking about too.
Yeah, for sure.
Olley, man, I really appreciate you, man. This was awesome. Everyone listening, thank you very much for being a fan, a subscriber. Please comment, tell us your favorite takeaway or a question for us. And much love, everybody. Stay inspired.